Hey everybody, welcome to May. So, thank you so much for sharing my birthday with me and sending me all the beautiful wishes to me. It meant a lot to see all those birthday wishes. Really made the day much more special. And I also want to thank you guys for all the encouragement for me when I announced that I released my manuscript to my publisher. It's like my baby, and I finally let it go, and really exciting. And I'll keep you guys posted about what's happening. I'm going to be offering special prices and special deals before the launch date, where you can get like special excerpts or an additional information. And I want you guys all to have access to that. So when I think about this month of May and I think about the solar eclipse, it really makes me think about, and Mercury in retrograde, it makes me think about communication and how the simple art of communicating can be something that gets completely messed up. That's the best way I can put it. Your intention for what you want to be saying and what actually comes out of your mouth aren't always the same. We all know this. But then it gets discombobulated when you're using tech like computer, email, when you're using text messaging to communicate things that perhaps maybe we should have communicated with the person in person. And what I wanted to say is that when you think about communication is supposed to happen, right? Between one person and another. And it was developed, this whole idea of communication, really to be interpersonal, right? Like right in person. And then as phones became more popular, it became something that you would do on the phone. And it's funny because I remember when I was younger, my mother would be like, this isn't something you should share on the phone. You should share this in person. And I would sort of roll my eyes, Mom, and say to her, of course you do it on the phone. And I was removing that conversation from an interpersonal, in-person conversation to the phone, which actually took the person out of it, right? And now with tech, we've even moved it further to text messaging. So we're not even hearing the person's voice. We're just reading their message. And then at a more formal level, we do it in email. And you know, what we don't realize when we're doing these things is that we are taking the essence of who we are out of our message. We're actually taking the frequency of our voice, the essence of our soul out of the message when we communicate in text. We're sort of creating this situation where people are getting less of us. And it makes sense, right? Because so many times you feel safer saying things in a text message, saying things in an email, than having to deal with the awkwardness of saying it in person or even in a phone call. But what I want to remind us all is that when we start to do that, we also are taking away the ability for the other person to respond. We're taking away the ability to hear what we're saying and how that impacts another person. And so I want to remind you, especially during this time with Mercury in retrograde, to be mindful of your communication. Try and go back to the beginning conversations when you can talk to somebody in person or at least on the telephone. Don't allow for that miscommunication to happen. That can happen in a text message or an email. Be mindful of the things you're saying and the way you're communicating. And maybe it will save you from having some miscommunications going forward. Just a little tip for May. I'm going to pull a card for the month of May in the hopes to settle some of these miscommunications, and I'm going to see what we are. I'm pulling from the Rose Oracle deck because I feel like that's a very healing deck. And so it's really interesting. This is the card that I picked. And it's interesting because when you look, you feel like there's three people here. And it's about the way that they relate to one another. It's about holding each other with compassion, with the highest regard, and holding each one of us as a unique individual and somebody that's worth caring about, listening to, and responding to. And it goes along right with our conversation that we're having right now. And I want to just say, don't sit in the space of condemning yourself for whatever you haven't done or for whatever you did do that you think you could have done better. Have compassion, because the thing is that when the imperfect pieces of ourselves show up, it's a time for us to actually embrace everything that we are. We hold ourselves to such high regard that we don't allow for imperfection. And sometimes it's within that imperfection that the humanness of who we are shows. I recently took a photo shoot with a really talented photographer, and the pictures were gorgeous. But when I looked at those pictures, it was really hard for me to see what I was looking at, because in my mind's eye, I kept on thinking about the perfection of what I wanted me to look like to the world. But maybe the perfection of what I wanted is not obtainable. Maybe the perfection of what I wanted is something that is unable to be reached. And maybe the thing that I really actually need to be looking at is the imperfections and how those imperfections make me unique. Look at your imperfections as a way and a sign of how you can't be replicated, how the uniqueness of you is perfect. And those imperfections are really the special gift and the special light that you bring to the world to show your uniqueness and add that flair that's only you. Have a beautiful month of May.